The Indiana Fever, congratulations, you four. You guys have successfully broken Caitlin Clark. Great job. You guys have tried your damnedest to turn her into a...
Caitlin Clark is a once-in-a-generation player, not the kind of thing people say loosely, the kind of thing you can actually prove. The same way Magic Johnson made you rethink what a point guard could be, the same way Michael Jordan made scoring look like an art form, the same way LeBron James walked into a league and immediately made it his. Caitlin Clark carries that same energy, that same gravitational pull, except she's doing it in women's basketball right now, and somehow the people closest to her are the biggest obstacle standing between her and her full potential. She is not a typical player. She never has been. From 30, sometimes 35 feet out, she can make a defense completely unravel. That's not hype. That's physics. Defenders have to sprint out to her well beyond the arc, and the second they do, the entire floor opens up. Teammates who wouldn't normally see daylight are suddenly wide open. Lanes that were locked shut are suddenly there for the taking. She doesn't just make plays happen, she makes the court reshape itself around her presence. That is a gift that cannot be coached into someone. Either you're built like that or you're not. Caitlin Clark is absolutely built like that. So why is Indiana Fever's coaching staff, Stephanie White, Kelly Krauskopf, Amber Cox, and even her own representation through Clutch Sports Group, running systems that barely use that? Post-entry sets, funneling everything into the paint while she's standing on the perimeter waiting. Caitlin Clark, someone who can crack a defense wide open without even touching the ball, being treated like a spot-up option. It's the kind of decision that makes you stop and stare. The talent is undeniable. The impact is right there. Someone just keeps choosing to look away from it.
Get rid of those four and you get rid of your stooge of an agent, Aaron Kane. You'll be free. And I know we don't want her to go the LeBron route, but at this point, you need to get rid of Aaron Kane and you need to call Rich Paul immediately.
Take a look at who Indiana Fever is actually trying to build this post-heavy system around. Monique Billings is barely cracking 10 minutes a night. 10 minutes. That's a bench contributor, not a focal point. And Aaliyah Boston, a genuinely talented, real future ahead of her, is still working on finishing through contact at the rim with any kind of reliability. She's not there yet, but even setting that aside, centering your entire offensive identity through the post while Caitlin Clark is standing on the wing doesn't just waste her, it hands every opposing defense exactly what they're hoping for. A blueprint to eliminate her without ever having to guard her. That's not a game plan, that's a gift wrapped up in a clipboard, and the post sets are only the beginning, because the rotation decisions, that's where this whole thing starts to unravel completely. 6.5 minutes, that's how long Caitlin Clark gets before she's being waved to the bench in the first quarter. 6.5 minutes. She's barely settled in, barely started reading how the defense is playing her, barely started doing the things that make her impossible to stop, and she's already sitting down. The results spoke for themselves. Portland went on a 13-2 run the second she came off the floor. The game flipped on a single substitution, and Stephanie White's response to that wasn't urgency, wasn't any kind of honest reassessment. It was an explanation that didn't hold up under the slightest scrutiny. The reasoning offered was that Aaliyah Boston is working under a minutes restriction, which is fair, that's a real situation, but then that same restriction was used to justify pulling Caitlin Clark at the exact same time. Two completely different players, two completely different circumstances, packaged together like they're the same conversation. They are not even in the same category. Here's what people don't always think about when Caitlin Clark sits down. You're not just losing her points, you're losing the entire force field she creates. Defenses that were scrambling, doubling, rotating, overextending, they breathe, they set up, they get organized. The spacing that was pulling everything apart collapses the moment she's not out there. And when she checks back in, she's not stepping into a rhythm that was maintained in her absence. She's stepping into a defense that has had time to reset, anchor in, and is no longer stressed by the threat she carries. That's not development. That's not rotation management. That's putting your best weapon down at the worst possible time and calling it strategy. Then came the Golden State explanation, and this one really lays it bare. Stephanie White said the substitution in that road game came down to not wanting Raven Johnson on the floor in a hostile environment without another ball handler beside her. Read that slowly. Caitlin Clark's floor time in a nationally televised road game was cut because the coaching staff was worried about a role player's comfort level in a loud arena. That was the reasoning. That was what they offered. But the deeper problem isn't even the one bad decision. It's what that reasoning reveals about how this organization thinks. They are choosing protection over everything else, and protection is exactly the wrong instinct when you're trying to build something real around a player like Caitlin Clark. The greats were never handled with that kind of caution. Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, they got thrown directly into the fire. Hostile crowds, elite defenses, high-stakes moments before they were ready. That pressure didn't break them, it built them. It sharpened them into exactly what they became. Keeping Caitlin Clark comfortable is not developing her, it's delaying her. It quietly signals that the organization doesn't fully believe she can handle what's coming. And what's coming? The playoff floors, the championship pressure, the arenas that will be louder and meaner than anything she's faced. Will not slow down and wait for Indiana Fever to decide she's prepared. The game doesn't work like that. Now think about what all of this is doing to her mentally. Caitlin Clark is the most recognized player in this sport right now. She moved the needle on women's basketball in ways that hadn't happened before. She walked into her professional career carrying that weight, that expectation, that responsibility. And every single time she starts to find her groove, starts to feel the game open up the way it does when she's at her best, she gets pulled. Not for any reason that makes real sense. Not for anything documented, just because that's apparently how the staff wants to do it. That kind of unpredictability gets into a player's head. Elite athletes survive on instinct and freedom. The moment a player starts wondering whether she's about to get yanked, she stops reacting and starts hesitating. She starts thinking through every decision instead of just making it. And for Caitlin Clark specifically, whose entire game runs on split-second reads, on improvisation, on the kind of instinctive creativity you cannot manufacture, hesitation is devastating. And then the coaching staff started making comments publicly suggesting Indiana Fever moves better and faster when Caitlin Clark isn't the one running things. In a closed film session, that's a coaching note. Said in front of cameras and reporters, that's a public statement of no confidence. It tells her teammates how to see her. It tells the media how to frame her. It tells every opposing coaching staff exactly where the crack in the relationship is. That kind of messaging doesn't stay in a press conference. It spreads. There are also reports that the team's sports psychologist has been pulled into conversations around getting Caitlin Clark to embrace her current situation with less resistance. Sit with that for a moment. The psychological resources inside that building aren't being used to empower her, to fuel her competitive drive, to help her demand the right environment for her talent. They're apparently being used to smooth over her frustration with a diminished role. That's not development, that's management. And it is exactly the wrong approach for a player who needs her fire burning at full intensity. Every transformative athlete needs people around them who understand the assignment, not just coaches and trainers, advocates, people who know exactly how much power their client holds and aren't afraid to pull it out when the moment calls for it. People who know that when you represent someone like Caitlin Clark, silence is not neutral. Silence is always a loss. And right now, the silence coming from her representation under Aaron Kane has been impossible to ignore. Hit pieces circulating through outlets like USA Today framing her situation as a player issue rather than a systemic coaching failure. And nothing from her camp to push back on that narrative. No coordinated response, no public repositioning, no behind-the-scenes pressure on the organization to rethink how they're handling the player responsible for most of their revenue and all of their visibility. Compare that to how an agency like Clutch Sports Group operates when Rich Paul has a client being publicly undermined. That response is already moving before the story even finishes spreading. Media relationships get activated, the counter narrative starts taking shape, and the organization gets reminded quietly but clearly exactly what they stand to lose if they keep going down a road that works against the person their entire business depends on. Here's the part that nobody wants to sit down and actually say out loud. Caitlin Clark is not just good for the Indiana Fever. She is not just good for women's basketball. She is genuinely, measurably, historically good for the entire sports landscape right now. And the WNBA as a business should be treating her accordingly. The ratings don't lie. The ticket numbers don't lie. The jersey sales don't lie. Arenas that were half empty 2 years ago are now selling out weeks in advance specifically because people want to see her play. Specifically her, not a team, not a concept, her. And that matters because the WNBA has been fighting for mainstream legitimacy for over 2 decades. They have been fighting for broadcast deals, for coverage, for the kind of cultural footprint that other leagues take for granted. And then Caitlin Clark walks through the door and hands them all of it almost overnight. NBC picked up games, CBS picked up games, USA Network expanded coverage. Viewership numbers that the league had never seen before suddenly became the baseline conversation. She didn't just grow the audience, she created a completely new one. People who had never watched a WNBA game in their life started tuning in because of her. That is not something you manufacture with a marketing campaign. That is something that happens once, maybe twice in the history of a league if they're lucky. So the question that keeps coming back around is why, with all of that on the table, the infrastructure around her seems so committed to making things harder than they need to be, because the WNBA itself has a stake in this. This isn't just Indiana Fever's problem to figure out. When Caitlin Clark is being misused, underutilized, or publicly undermined, the ripple effect goes well beyond one franchise. It touches the entire league's momentum. It slows something down that took years of grinding just to get started. And Caitlin Clark herself, this is the thing that gets lost in all the noise around the politics and the rotations and the front office decisions. She has handled all of this with a level of composure that is genuinely remarkable. She shows up every single game, every single practice, every single media availability. She doesn't blow up press conferences. She doesn't throw teammates under the bus. She doesn't go on social media and air grievances publicly. She just keeps going, keeps shooting, keeps facilitating, keeps doing the work, even when the system she's operating inside of isn't doing the work for her. That kind of professionalism under that kind of pressure at this stage of her career says everything about the kind of competitor she actually is. But here is the reality, and this is the part that should make everyone paying attention genuinely uncomfortable. Composure has limits, patience has limits, and the window where a player is at her most hungry, most driven, most locked in and ready to take over is not infinite. These are the years that define careers. The early seasons are where habits get built, where identities get established, where a player figures out exactly what kind of force she's gonna be at the highest level. And right now, instead of those years being spent in a system that pushes her to her absolute ceiling, they are being spent navigating internal friction, unexplained substitution patterns, and an organizational philosophy that seems almost allergic to fully unleashing what it actually has. The WNBA cannot afford for that window to get wasted. Not now. Not when the momentum is this real and this rare. Because the truth is that stars like Caitlin Clark do not come around on a schedule. You do not get to place an order for the next one. She arrived at a specific moment in a specific cultural climate, carrying a specific kind of energy that connected with people in a way that goes beyond basketball. That combination is not repeatable on demand. And every game that goes by where she is not operating at full capacity, every rotation decision that chips away at her rhythm, every public comment that quietly works against her credibility, all of it is time that does not come back. What she is capable of when everything is actually working, when the offense is built around her range, when the system trusts her reads, when she's got real minutes and real freedom to operate, is something that this league has not seen before. Not at this scale, not with this kind of reach into the broader sports conversation and the people who understand what's actually at stake here, not just for Indiana, but for the entire league, need to be asking much louder questions about whether the current setup is built to let that happen, because right now it isn't. And the longer that stays true, the more of something genuinely historic gets left on the table.
Lexi Hull, at the end of the game on Indianapolis radio, she spilled the beans. She said, that play didn't go exactly as planned. Wait, what do you mean? Caitlin Clark had a wide open three. Wait, getting her wide open to win the game wasn't exactly as planned? Stephanie White's reaction after Caitlin Clark hit the game-winning shot. Reaction of a coach said, that didn't really go exactly as planned.
Picture this. The final buzzer hasn't even finished echoing, and Caitlin Clark just drained a cold-blooded three-pointer to hand the Connecticut Sun a loss they weren't ready for. You'd expect the entire Indiana Fever sideline to be losing their minds. But Stephanie White? She's standing there with the same energy you'd have watching your food get carried to somebody else's table. Stone cold. No fist pump, no fire, no nothing. And that reaction alone, before any of the details even came out, was already telling a story. Because here's where it gets real. After the game, Lexi Hull went on Indianapolis radio and casually dropped something that had people hitting rewind. She basically told the hosts that the final possession didn't play out the way the team had drawn it up in that huddle. Not a minor tweak, not a slight adjustment. She made it sound like what actually unfolded on the court and what was supposed to happen were two completely separate things. And when a player admits that publicly, you have to stop and ask why. Now sit with that for a second. If the designed play wasn't built around getting Caitlin Clark, one of the most lethal shooters in this league right now, a player defense is literally game planned specifically to contain, a clean, wide-open look from three to ice the game, then what was the actual call? Because from every angle, that's exactly what went down. Clark got the ball in space, caught clean, elevated, and buried it without a second thought. It looked like a play drawn up for her, but apparently it wasn't. That's what makes Stephanie White's blank stare suddenly start making a whole lot of sense. That wasn't a coach being composed under pressure. That was a coach standing there realizing her players had just gone completely off script during the highest stakes possession of the entire game. And somehow, inexplicably, it worked. The designed action got scrapped in real time, and by everything we're piecing together now, Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark made a decision entirely on their own, trusted the moment, and just ran with it. No timeout called, no audible from the sideline, just instinct. And the ball went through the net.
We got the inbound from Sophie to Caitlin Clark. Now, many people are thinking this is supposed to be right here. Give it to Kelsey Mitchell right here. She's gonna get it going downhill. Tries to get a nice pull-up midi or taking it all the way to the rack. However, this misdirection on the backside, Sonia Citrone and Cody McMahon, they miscommunicate. They get lost in assignment. They're supposed to switch and they don't switch. So one goes with Lexi Hull.
The play that closed out that game? It didn't come from Stephanie White's clipboard. It came from Austin Kelly, the assistant coach who's quietly been the architect behind Indiana's entire out-of-bounds operation this season. This is the same guy who designed the play that got Caitlin Clark a game-tying 3 against Washington. Same guy who drew up the Aaliyah Boston mid-range look that didn't fall. And on this night, against Connecticut, he was the one with the marker in his hand when the Fever circled up for that final huddle. The play was built around Kelsey Mitchell as the primary option. She was supposed to use an Aaliyah Boston screen, catch it on the move, and attack downhill toward the rim. That's where the play's first gear lived. On the backside, Kelly layered in some misdirection, Lexi Hull setting a back screen, with Caitlin Clark theoretically peeling off that action as a secondary read if the defense locked up Mitchell. That's smart design. Give the defense two things to handle and let the cracks reveal themselves. But Connecticut's Sonia Citrone and JC Sheldon didn't just let a crack form. They basically knocked the whole wall down. Their assignment on that back screen was a switch. One player stays on Lexi Hull, the other stays glued to Caitlin Clark. Simple, fundamental, the kind of coverage you rep until it's automatic. Except both of them followed Lexi Hull at the same time, in the same direction, leaving Caitlin Clark, the player that opposing coaches lose sleep over, the one defenses literally restructure their entire scheme just to account for, standing completely wide open at the three-point line with the clock bleeding out. That's not just a lapse in communication, that's a full-on defensive meltdown at the worst possible moment. You cannot, under any circumstances, lose track of Caitlin Clark in a late-game situation. She doesn't need much. She doesn't need long. Give her a sliver of daylight, and she will make you regret it before your feet even leave the ground. Two defenders, one critical possession, both made the exact same wrong read simultaneously. And on the other end of that mistake was someone who's been waiting her whole career for exactly that kind of moment. Caitlin Clark didn't blink, didn't hesitate, didn't even flinch. The ball was leaving her hands before the defense even had a chance to realize what went wrong.
Then we have Millie. Millie Rock on any block. Then we have Millie. The first thing that shows that play wasn't for Caitlin is AB screening to free Mitchell. The second thing is the pin down isn't set for Cece, A lot of serendipity, Sophie made a clutch read and react play, and CC is clutch as F. Now, if you look at the comments on this, many people are disagreeing.
So the online discourse around this play started heating up fast, and right in the middle of it was somebody going by Coach Anderson. And honestly, nobody seems entirely sure who this person even is, but they stepped into the conversation with what they framed as the definitive breakdown of what went down. According to Coach Anderson, the official explanation is pretty straightforward. Kelsey Mitchell was the first read, Caitlin Clark was the second read, and Sophie Cunningham made the call to skip past Mitchell entirely because the defender guarding the inbounder was positioning herself to take that passing lane completely out of the equation. That's why the pass to Caitlin came in a little late. Sophie had to make the adjustment in real time. Clean explanation. Makes sense on the surface. Case closed, right? Not even close, because Millie, who's been putting out some of the sharper tactical breakdowns on this team all season, came right back with a counter that's hard to just wave off. The argument was essentially this. Two separate pieces of this play's structure tell you it was never built with Caitlin Clark as the actual target. First, you've got Aaliyah Boston running a screen specifically to free up Kelsey Mitchell. That's not incidental, that's the play's engine. The whole first gear of this action is designed to manufacture a clean catch for Mitchell coming downhill. You don't draw that up if your real intention is to get the ball to someone on the backside. Second, and this is the part that really makes you lean in, the pin-down screen on the backside wasn't even being executed in a way that was going to create a clean look for Clark. It wasn't set with precision. It wasn't timed to optimize her catch. The alignment of the whole action suggests Clark's movement was more of an afterthought built into the design rather than a primary weapon being deliberately unleashed. Millie's overall read on the situation was that Sophie Cunningham deserves enormous credit for making an elite instinctual decision under pressure, and that Caitlin Clark's ability to perform in high-leverage moments is something you simply cannot overlook or understate. It wasn't scheme. It wasn't a master plan unfolding exactly as Austin Kelly drew it up. It was a player making a split-second read and trusting the most dangerous shooter on the floor to finish the job. And Caitlin Clark, for her part, did exactly what anyone paying attention this season already knew she would do. She caught it, squared up, and sent the ball through the net without a single moment of hesitation. But here's where the fan base conversation gets genuinely interesting, because the comment sections under every one of these breakdowns look like a divided community that can't even agree on what they just watched. One half of the Fever fan base is fully convinced this was a deliberate misdirection scheme from the start, that the Mitchell action was always the bait, and that getting Clark open on the backside was the real intended outcome all along. In this version of the story, Austin Kelly is a genius playing chess while Connecticut's defense was playing checkers, and everything unfolded exactly according to plan. The other half is just as convinced that Kelsey Mitchell was legitimately supposed to get that ball, that Sophie Cunningham went completely off script when she saw the passing lane close, and that what looked like a brilliant designed play was actually one player's improvised decision colliding with another player's ice-cold execution. And the reason this debate isn't resolving itself is because, depending on which coaching source you believe and which part of the film you're looking at, both takes have something to stand on. What both sides do agree on, even if they won't admit it in the same breath, is that without Caitlin Clark on the other end of that pass, none of this matters. The debate only exists because she made it. The story only has a dramatic ending because she was standing in that exact spot, at that exact moment, completely ready.
Plan. I'm just putting two and two together. If people are saying, all right, well, this should have gone to Kelsey, but it went to Caitlin Clark instead, and then Lexi Hull is coming out and confirming, well, that wasn't exactly what was drawn up.
Here's where everything starts to lock into place, and it all circles back to what Lexi Hull said on that radio show after the game, because that interview isn't just a casual post-game soundbite anymore. In context with everything else we've been breaking down, it becomes the piece of evidence that kind of ties the whole thing together. Think about the logic here. If this play went exactly as Austin Kelly drew it up, if the entire design was always pointing toward getting Caitlin Clark a wide-open three-pointer at the final buzzer, then why on earth would Lexi Hull get on Indianapolis radio and tell the hosts that it didn't go exactly according to plan? That's not how players talk about plays that worked the way they were supposed to. When something goes right and the result matches the intention, players come out and say exactly that. They credit the coaching staff. They talk about the execution. They celebrate the design. Lexi didn't do any of that. She specifically chose language that created distance between what happened on the floor and what was supposed to happen in that huddle. And here's the thing. She wasn't talking about sloppy execution. She wasn't saying the timing was a half second off, or that somebody's footwork wasn't clean coming off the screen, or that the spacing could have been tighter. Those are the kinds of technical complaints you hear when a play works but not perfectly. What Lexi said was fundamentally different. She was speaking to the structure of the possession itself, the bones of what was drawn up versus what actually played out. That's a much bigger admission than people initially gave it credit for. She essentially confirmed, without making it a headline, that the final product the viewing audience watched was not the play that was designed. So let's reason through this the way it deserves to be reasoned through. If we take Lexi's words seriously, and there's no real reason not to because she has zero motivation to lie about something this specific, and we layer that on top of everything the film is already showing us about how this play was structured, then one conclusion keeps rising to the top. Kelsey Mitchell was the actual intended recipient of that inbound pass. The play was built to get her the ball in motion, coming off Aaliyah Boston's screen, so she could attack the rim going downhill with pace and force the defense to make a decision. Either she scores at the rim, or Connecticut collapses and she finds an open teammate on the kickout. That's the play. That's what Austin Kelly put on that whiteboard. But Sophie Cunningham looked at what was developing in front of her in real time, and this is the part that deserves genuine recognition. And she processed the situation faster than the defense even realized what was happening. Sonia Citron and JC Sheldon had already committed their mistake. They were both chasing Lexi Hull, leaving Caitlin Clark in open space with no one assigned to her. And Sophie caught all of that before the play had even fully developed. She made a decision that wasn't in the playbook. She bypassed the designed primary action entirely, ignored the drawn-up first read, and put the ball in the hands of Caitlin Clark. Now, let's be clear about what that decision actually represents, because it's easy to gloss over it in the excitement of the moment. Sophie Cunningham, in the final seconds of a game with everything on the line, chose to override the coaching staff's call in real time. That's not a small thing. That's an audible at the highest stakes moment of the night, made entirely on instinct and court vision. And it worked. Not because of luck, not because of chaos, but because Sophie read the defense perfectly and trusted the one player on the floor who was built for that exact moment. Caitlin Clark, for her part, didn't need a second invitation. She didn't need the play to be drawn up for her. She didn't need the design to center around her. She just needed the ball, a fraction of open space, and a clock that still had a little life left in it. Sophie gave her all three, and Caitlin did the rest. Catching clean, rising without hesitation, and splashing a three-pointer that the Connecticut Sun will probably be thinking about for a long time. The plan changed. The result didn't. And that's the most Caitlin Clark thing that's happened all season.
Look at Stephanie White's reaction after the shot goes in. And by reaction, I mean lack of reaction. Now, many people are saying, oh, well, this is because that's her on the bottom of the screen. Well, that's because there's a lot of time.
Let's talk about Stephanie White's body language in that moment, because what her face did, or more accurately, what it didn't do after that shot dropped through the net, is something you genuinely cannot explain away with coaching composure or professionalism or any of the usual excuses people reach. 4. The shot goes in. Indiana wins the game. The arena is going absolutely insane. Fans are on their feet. Players are rushing the floor. The energy in that building is the kind that stays with you for weeks. And Stephanie White is standing on the sideline with her arms hanging at her sides, her face completely flat, looking like someone who just watched something happen that she's still trying to process. Not the controlled stillness of a veteran coach keeping her composure in a big moment. Something else. Something that reads more like surprise mixed with complicated feelings that she couldn't quite get to her face in time to mask. And here's the exercise that really exposes everything. Just run it back in your head with a different player making that shot. Picture, Kelsey Mitchell catches that inbound, attacks downhill exactly like the play was drawn up, and either finishes at the rim or, in some alternate version, pulls up and hits a mid-ranger to win it. You genuinely believe Stephanie White stands there with that same empty expression? Come on, she's sprinting down the sideline. She's grabbing the nearest assistant coach by the collar. She's losing her composure in the best possible way because her designed play, her primary option, her system, it all just worked exactly the way she and Austin Kelly drew it up in that huddle. The celebration would have been immediate, instinctive, and completely uncontrollable. Coaches don't hold that back when things go according to plan. That's the whole point of having a plan, so that when it executes, you feel it in your chest. But Caitlin Clark hit it instead, through a blown defensive coverage, off a pass that Sophie Cunningham made by scrapping the designed action entirely, on a possession that, according to Lexi Hull's own post-game admissions, did not unfold the way it was supposed to. And Stephanie White just stood there. The internet, naturally, found humor in it immediately. People joking about the specific kind of face you make when something you didn't authorize somehow works out anyway, and you're too stunned to even be happy about it. Obviously, the more extreme versions of that joke are just people being people online. But underneath the comedy, there's a real and legitimate observation being made. That expression on Stephanie White's face is not what a coach looks like when they're watching their game plan reach its perfect conclusion. That's what a coach looks like when they're recalibrating in real time, accepting an outcome they had no control over, and reminding themselves that a win is still a win, even when it didn't come from the play they called. That alone would be enough to carry this conversation. But then the post-game footage adds another whole layer that people are not letting go of. Watch Caitlin Clark come off that floor. She's locked in with Kelsey Mitchell immediately, and the energy between those two tells you everything. There's a real unspoken communication happening there, a shared acknowledgement between two players who both clearly understand exactly what just went down on that final possession and find genuine joy in it together. The smile Caitlin has in that moment isn't the polished, media-ready expression of someone doing the right thing for the cameras. It's the real one, the kind that comes from the gut when something works out in the most unexpected, chaotic, and ultimately perfect way possible. And then Caitlin walks right past Stephanie White. No extended embrace, no warm exchange, no moment of coach and player basking in something they built together. Whatever interaction does happen between the two of them reads as obligatory at best. The kind of acknowledgement you extend because the situation requires it, not because there's genuine warmth powering it. It's brief, it's surface level, and it's a striking contrast to the authentic joy Caitlin was clearly feeling just seconds earlier with her teammate. It says something about where that relationship currently lives. And when you stack it on top of the blank stare, on top of Lexi Hull's radio comments, on top of everything we've been pulling apart in this breakdown, the picture it paints becomes increasingly difficult to dismiss as coincidence or just a bad camera angle caught at the wrong moment.
When you just lost money on a bet, you fixed. Hate to see it. Now, folks, take a look at this interaction between the two. Caitlin Clark makes a shot. She's coming to walk off the court, hits Cody McMahon with the tray. Can't see me, Cody McMahon. Go back to college.
And Stephanie White wasn't the only one on that sideline who couldn't find a single ounce of celebration energy when that shot dropped. Because once you know what you're looking for, you start scanning the rest of the bench. And that's when you find Cheryl Miller. All the way to the right side of the frame, standing there while everyone around her is reacting to one of the most electric moments of the Fever's season. And Cheryl Miller's face? Completely still. Not a flicker of excitement, not a fist pump, not even a delayed reaction that catches up a second or two late, the way it sometimes does when the emotion takes a moment to hit. Nothing. Just this flat, unreadable expression that looks completely disconnected from the environment she's physically standing in. An environment where a game-winning three-pointer just went through the net and the building is shaking. Now stop and really sit with how strange that is. We're not talking about a neutral observer in the stands. We're talking about an assistant coach on the Indiana Fever sideline, a member of the coaching staff whose job, whose investment, whose professional reputation is directly tied to what this team does on the floor. One of her players just hit the most important shot of the game in the most important moment of the night and secured a win. That should be automatic. The celebration shouldn't even be a conscious decision at that point. It should just happen, the way it happens for everyone else in that arena who cares about the outcome. But for Cheryl Miller, standing just a few feet from where all of that joy is erupting, there's a complete disconnect. The moment lands and she absorbs it like someone watching a highlight from a game they have no rooting interest in. And the question that follows, the one that's getting harder and harder to avoid as all of these pieces stack up together, is simply, why? Why does an assistant coach on a professional basketball team look like that when her franchise player just won the game? What possible emotional logic produces that reaction in that moment from someone who's supposed to be invested in this team's success? The answer, when you line up everything we've been breaking down across this entire sequence, is starting to feel less like speculation and more like the only explanation that actually fits everything we're seeing. The coaching staff, and this appears to go beyond just Stephanie White, had a vision for how this game was supposed to end. That vision had Kelsey Mitchell at the center of it. The play was designed for her. The primary action was built around her catch and her athleticism attacking the rim. The narrative the staff wanted to walk away with, the story they wanted the post-game to tell, was one where Kelsey Mitchell came through in the biggest moment and proved that this Indiana Fever team has weapons and depth and a winning formula that extends beyond any single player's star power. That's the ending they drew up, literally and figuratively. Caitlin Clark didn't let that happen. Not because she forced anything, not because she demanded the ball, not because she inserted herself into a moment that wasn't hers, but because Sophie Cunningham read the floor and trusted her. Because Sonia Citron and JC Sheldon lost track of her at the worst possible time, and because when that ball arrived in her hands, she did what she has done over and over again at every level she's ever played. She made the shot. She closed the game. She was, once again, the reason the Fever walked off that court with a win. And that, right there, is what those flat expressions are actually communicating. It's not indifference to the win. Nobody in that organization wants to lose. It's something more specific and more uncomfortable than that. It's the look of people who had a plan for how to validate a particular message about their team's identity and watched that plan get dismantled in real time by the one player they were trying hardest not to center the story around. Caitlin Clark took the hero moment. She took the highlight. She took the narrative. And she did it without anyone's permission, in the most unscripted and undeniable way possible, by simply being exactly who she is when it matters most. The frustration written across those faces on the sideline isn't about the outcome of the game. It's about the fact that once again, no matter what the play says, no matter what the design intends, no matter how the staff tries to shape the story around this team, Caitlin Clark finds a way to be the story anyway. What makes all of this so fascinating is that nobody in that organization is going to come out and say any of this directly. That's not how these things work. Stephanie White is going to keep giving the same composed post-game pressers. Cheryl Miller isn't going to sit in front of a camera and explain why her face looked like that. Austin Kelly isn't going to publicly confirm whether Sophie Cunningham went rogue or executed the design. The official version of events has already been established, and everybody with a credential around that team is going to stick to it. But the film doesn't lie. The body language doesn't lie. And Lexi Hull's radio interview, which, let's be honest, was probably just her being genuine without fully thinking through the implications of what she was saying, doesn't lie either. All of these things exist simultaneously, and they all point in the same direction, no matter which angle you approach them from. What this situation really exposes is a tension that's been simmering inside that Fever locker room and that coaching staff for longer than just this one game. There's a version of this team that the front office and coaching staff want to present to the world. A balanced, system-driven, nobody bigger than the team version. And then there's the version that keeps showing up on the actual court, where one player continuously finds herself at the center of the most important moments, whether the design calls for it or not. Those two versions keep colliding, and every time they do, you get exactly what you saw on that sideline. A win that doesn't feel like a win to the people who are supposed to be controlling it. Caitlin Clark is just out here playing basketball, and somehow that keeps being the most complicated thing in the room.